Hey guys, tonight we're slowing things down again. But this time, we're heading east into a world of stillness, structure, and quiet strength. Welcome to another journey into the forgotten corners of history. But before we enter, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy these slow, immersive stories. And in the comments below, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always amazing to see how far these peaceful little journeys travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe light a candle. Let the noise around you fall away. Because tonight, we're stepping into a space of deep calm and quiet discipline. Tonight, you are inside a samurai household. The morning air is cool and still. Mist curls along wooden verandas. The scent of cypress and rice lingers in the air. The walls are thin, but the silence is deep. You move slowly, deliberately, because everything in this world is intentional. The clock doesn't rule your life here. Instead, time flows like water, measured by the warmth of sunlight on tatami mats, the rustle of bamboo in the breeze, and the hush of ink brushing rice paper. You live in harmony with duty, with nature, with others. Every gesture has meaning, every word weight. So take a deep breath, let your muscles loosen, let your thoughts soften, and together let's step gently into a world ruled not by chaos, but by calm. Your day in the samurai household begins now. In the Japan of centuries past, during the long peace of the Edo period, when the Tokugawa shogunate ruled with steady hands from 1603 to 1868, the samurai lived lives of quiet discipline. These were not the warriors of constant battle that stories sometimes tell, but rather guardians of a social order that valued harmony, duty, and the careful maintenance of tradition. The islands of Japan stretched from north to south like a gentle chain of mountains rising from the sea, each season bringing its own rhythm to the daily life of those who served as the backbone of feudal society. The archipelago itself was a teacher. Its mountains and valleys, its rivers and coastlines, all shaping the character of the people who called it home. The samurai household existed within this world of rice fields and mountain villages, of cherry blossoms that bloomed with clockwork precision each spring, and of autumn leaves that fell in patterns as old as the earth itself. The geography of Japan shaped everything about how these families lived, from the materials they used to build their homes to the foods they ate and the clothes they wore. Mountains covered much of the land, creating valleys where communities nestled like cupped hands holding precious water. Rivers carved their way through these landscapes, providing the lifeblood that turned rice paddies into mirrors reflecting the sky. The volcanic soil, rich and dark, supported the rice that would become the foundation of every meal, the economic unit that measured wealth, the symbol of life itself. In this world of natural beauty and seasonal change, the samurai served not just as warriors, but as administrators, teachers, and keepers of culture. They were the literate class, the ones who could read and write in a time when most could not. They were the bridge between the common people and the daimyo, the feudal lords who governed the various domains that made up Japan. Their households were centers of learning and culture, places where the arts of war and peace were practiced with equal devotion. The responsibilities that rested upon their shoulders were as varied as they were weighty, requiring them to be diplomats and warriors, scholars and judges, teachers and students all at once. The climate of Japan, with its distinct seasons and monsoon rains, created a rhythm of life that was intimately connected to the natural world. The hot, humid summers brought both abundance and challenge, requiring careful management of food storage and the constant attention to cleanliness that would prevent disease. The cold winters demanded different skills, the ability to preserve warmth and light during the long months when the sun seemed reluctant to rise. Spring and autumn were times of transition, each bringing its own tasks and its own rewards, its own lessons about the impermanence of all things and the beauty that could be found in change. The selection of a site for a samurai residence was never a matter taken lightly. Location meant everything in a world where social hierarchy was as fixed as the mountains themselves. The house needed to be positioned to show proper respect to those of higher rank while maintaining dignity among equals. Considerations of wind direction, water flow, and the movement of the sun across the sky all played their part in determining where a samurai family would make their home. The selection process often took months or even years, involving consultations with experts in feng shui, careful observation of the land through different seasons, and negotiations with neighbors and local authorities. The ideal location would be elevated enough to provide good drainage during the rainy season, but not so high as to be exposed to the worst of the winter winds. It would be near enough to water sources to ensure a reliable supply, but far enough from rivers to avoid the risk of flooding. The soil needed to be stable enough to support the weight of the buildings, but rich enough to support the gardens that would provide both food and beauty. The orientation of the house was crucial, with the main rooms facing south to capture the maximum amount of sunlight during the short winter days, while providing protection from the harsh summer sun. The construction of such a residence was an art form in itself, requiring the skills of craftsmen who had learned their trades from fathers and grandfathers stretching back through generations. These builders understood not just the practical aspects of creating shelter, but the deeper meanings embedded in every beam and joint. They knew that a house was more than mere protection from the elements. It was a statement of values, a commitment to a way of life that honored both the past and the future. The master carpenter who oversaw the construction was a figure of great respect in the community, his knowledge and skill recognized as essential to the well-being of the family who would inhabit the finished home. The organization of the household followed patterns that had been refined over centuries, Each room had its purpose, each doorway its meaning. The arrangement of spaces reflected the complex relationships between family members, servants, and guests. There was a place for everything, and everything had its place, creating an environment where daily life could flow as smoothly as water over stones. The genkan, or entrance hall, was the first space visitors encountered, a place of transition where the outside world was left behind and the inner world of the household was entered. The removal of shoes here was not merely practical, but symbolic, a ritual that marked the boundary between the public and private realms. The foundation of any samurai household was built upon principles that went far deeper than mere construction techniques. These were homes designed to last for generations, where children would grow up learning the same lessons their parents had learned, where traditions would be passed down like treasured heirlooms. The very stones that formed the base of these structures were chosen for their ability to endure, to provide stability in a world where change was constant, but values remained steadfast. The foundation stones were often blessed by Shinto priests before being set in place, their positioning marked by ceremonies that connected the physical act of building with the spiritual realm. The preparation of the foundation was a process that could take many months, involving the careful excavation of the site, the placement of drainage systems, and the laying of the stones that would support the wooden framework above. Each stone was carefully selected, not just for its size and shape, but for its character, its ability to work in harmony with its neighbors. The master builders understood that the foundation was the most important part of any structure, that a house built on a weak foundation would not survive the earthquakes that regularly shook the Japanese islands. Water was the blood life of the samurai household, and its management was treated with the reverence due to something sacred. The daily ritual of bathing was not merely about cleanliness, but about purification, about washing away not just the dust of the day, but the spiritual impurities that might have accumulated. The bathhouse, often separate from the main dwelling, was a place of quiet contemplation, where the hot water worked its magic on tired muscles and troubled minds. The construction of the bath was itself an art, requiring knowledge of how to heat water efficiently, how to maintain the proper temperature, and how to ensure that the bathing area remained clean and sanitary. The ritual of bathing began long before the actual immersion in hot water. The preparation of the bath was a careful process, involving the heating of water in large kettles, the cleaning of the bathing area, and the arrangement of towels and robes. The water itself was often scented with aromatic woods or herbs, creating an atmosphere of luxury and relaxation. The act of bathing was performed with the same attention to detail that characterized every other aspect of samurai life, each movement deliberate and purposeful. The household well was dug with care, its location chosen through a combination of practical knowledge and spiritual guidance. The water that flowed from these depths was precious, drawn up bucket by hands that understood its value. The digging of a well was a community effort, involving not just the household, but neighbors and local specialists who understood the underground geography of the area. The well digger was a skilled craftsman
who could read the signs that indicated the presence of water, who knew how to construct a well that would provide clean, reliable water for generations. During the dry months, every drop was conserved, collected in wooden barrels that sat in the shadows of the house like silent sentinels guarding liquid treasure. The barrels themselves were works of art, constructed by coopers who understood the properties of different woods, who knew how to shape staves and bind them with hoops to create containers that would last for decades. The placement of these barrels was carefully considered, positioned where they would be protected from the sun, but accessible for daily use. When the rains came, as they did each year with the changing seasons, the household transformed its approach to water collection. Bamboo gutters channeled the falling drops into large ceramic vessels, their surfaces smooth from years of use. The sound of rain on the wooden roof became a lullaby, a gentle percussion that spoke of abundance and renewal. Children learned to read the sky, to know when the clouds were gathering and when the household should prepare for the gift of water from above. The rainy season, known as tsuyu, was a time of particular importance, when the household's water reserves were replenished and the gardens received the moisture they needed to flourish. The ceramic vessels used for water storage were crafted by potters who had perfected their art over generations, their hands shaped by years of working with clay, their eyes trained to see the subtle variations in color and texture that indicated quality. These vessels were not merely functional, but beautiful, their surfaces often decorated with designs that reflected the natural world. The placement of these vessels throughout the household was both practical and aesthetic, creating focal points that added to the overall harmony of the living space.
The cleaning routines of the samurai household were exercises in mindfulness, each task performed with the same attention to detail that a warrior might bring to maintaining his sword. Floors were swept with bamboo brooms that whispered against the tatami mats, their soft brushing sounds creating a rhythm that measured the passage of time. The brooms themselves were carefully crafted, their bamboo tines selected for their flexibility and durability, their handles shaped to fit comfortably in the hand. The art of sweeping was passed down from generation to generation, each movement refined to achieve maximum efficiency with minimum effort. Clothes were washed in wooden tubs with soap made from ash and rice bran, then hung on lines that stretched between posts driven deep into the earth. The process of making soap was itself a complex art, requiring knowledge of which woods produced the best ash, how to extract the lye, and how to combine it with oils and other ingredients to create a cleansing agent that was both effective and gentle. The washing of clothes was typically a communal activity, with women gathering around the washing tubs to share news and gossip while their hands worked in the soapy water. The drying of clothes required its own set of skills, an understanding of how different fabrics responded to sun and wind, how to arrange garments to prevent wrinkles and fading. The clotheslines themselves were works of engineering, designed to support heavy wet fabrics while allowing for easy access. The posts that supported the lines were often carved with decorative motifs, turning a functional necessity into an element of beauty. The paths that wound through the household compound were works of art in themselves, each stone placed with intention and care.
These walkways guided not just the movement of feet, but the flow of energy through the space, creating routes that honored both efficiency and beauty. The placement of stepping stones followed principles that had been developed over centuries, creating patterns that pleased the eye while serving practical purposes. The stones were selected not just for their size and shape, but for their color and texture, their ability to complement the plants and structures around them. The maintenance of these paths was a constant concern, requiring regular attention to keep them level and free of moss and debris. The repositioning of stones was a delicate art, requiring an understanding of balance and proportion that went far beyond mere practical considerations. The paths were not just routes for walking, but elements of design that helped to create the overall aesthetic of the household compound. Indoor movement followed its own set of rules, unspoken but universally understood. The removal of footwear at the entrance was not merely a matter of cleanliness, but a ritual of transition, a way of leaving the outside world behind and entering a space of inner peace. The soft shuffle of feet on tatami mats created a sound that was almost musical, a gentle percussion that accompanied the daily dance of domestic life. The tatami mats themselves were arranged in specific patterns, their placement governed by traditions that had been established over centuries. The pacing through the household was deliberate, never hurried, always mindful. Each step was placed with consciousness, each movement considered. This was not the result of rigid training, but of a deep understanding that how one moved through space affected not just the body, but the spirit. The samurai understood that grace in movement was a reflection of grace in character, that the way one walked through one's own home was a statement about one's relationship with the world. The training in proper movement began in childhood, with children learning to walk softly, to turn corners gracefully, to open and close doors without unnecessary noise.
The flow of movement through the household changed with the seasons and the hours of the day. Morning brought a different rhythm than evening, summer a different pace than winter. The household adapted to these natural cycles, its inhabitants moving in harmony with the larger rhythms of nature. There was no fighting against the natural order, no attempt to impose artificial schedules upon the gentle flow of time. The daily routine was flexible enough to accommodate the variations that came with changing weather and seasonal demands. The architecture of the samurai household was a masterpiece of simplicity and function, built from materials that spoke of the deep connection between human habitation and the natural world. Wood was the primary building material, but not just any wood. The selection of timber was a process that involved understanding the character of different trees, the way various woods aged and weathered, the sounds they made when the wind passed through them. The master carpenter could look at a tree and envision its future life as part of a building, understanding how its grain would respond to stress, how its color would change with age, how its scent would contribute to the atmosphere of the home. The wooden framework of the house was joined without nails, each piece carefully shaped to fit with its neighbors in harmony that could withstand the trembling of the earth itself. The craftsmen who built these homes understood that flexibility was more important than rigidity, that a house that could bend would outlast one that was merely strong. The wooden beams were like the bones of some great creature, providing structure while allowing for the natural movement that kept the building alive.
The joinery techniques used in these buildings were marvels of engineering, requiring no metal fasteners, yet creating connections that could last for centuries. The preparation of the wood was a lengthy process involving careful selection of trees, proper seasoning to remove moisture, and patient shaping with hand tools that had been passed down through generations of craftsmen. Each piece of wood was treated with respect, its natural beauty enhanced rather than hidden by the construction process. The sounds of the carpenter's tools were music to the ears of those who understood the craft. The rhythmic tapping of hammers, the whisper of planes shaving curls from timber, the gentle scraping of saws cutting through grain. Paper played a crucial role in the construction of these homes, but this was not the fragile material that might first come to mind. The paper used in samurai households was strong and durable, made from mulberry bark that had been processed through techniques handed down through generations. These paper screens, known as shoji, filtered the light that entered the home, creating a soft, diffused glow that was gentle on the eyes and peaceful to the spirit. The making of this paper was itself an art, requiring knowledge of which plants to use, how to process the fibers, and how to create sheets that were both strong and beautiful. The shoji screens were works of art in their own right, their wooden frames carefully proportioned to create pleasing geometric patterns. The paper was attached to these frames with a rice paste that was both strong and flexible, allowing the paper to expand and contract with changes in humidity without tearing. The replacement of shoji paper was a seasonal ritual, typically performed in preparation for the new year, when the household would take on a fresh, clean appearance. Stone was used sparingly, but with great effect, primarily in the foundations and in the gardens that surrounded the home. Each stone was chosen for its particular qualities, its color and texture, and the way it complemented its neighbors. The placement of stones was an art form in itself, requiring an understanding of balance and proportion that went far beyond mere construction techniques. The stones used in samurai households were often collected from specific locations, their provenance as important as their physical properties. The quarrying and transport of stone was a complex undertaking involving teams of workers who understood how to extract stone without damaging it, how to move heavy pieces without the aid of modern machinery. The selection of stones for particular purposes required an eye trained by years of experience, an understanding of how different types of stone would weather and age, how they would interact with the elements that surrounded them.
The tatami mats that covered the floors were marvels of craftsmanship, woven from rice straw and covered with a surface of soft rush grass. Each mat was exactly the same size, creating a standardized measurement that influenced the design of the entire house. The feel of tatami under bare feet was one of the signature sensations of life in a samurai household, a tactile reminder of the connection between human habitation and the rice fields that sustained all life. The making of tatami was a specialized craft, requiring knowledge of how to prepare the straw, how to weave it into a solid foundation, and how to attach the rush grass covering. The rush grass used for tatami covering was harvested at specific times of the year when the plants had reached the perfect balance of strength and flexibility. The weaving of the covering required great skill, as the pattern had to be both beautiful and functional, capable of withstanding years of use while maintaining its appearance.
The edges of tatami mats were finished with decorative borders that indicated the status of the household, the patterns and colors chosen according to strict social conventions. The sliding doors that divided the interior spaces were works of art in their own right, their wooden frames holding panels of paper or cloth that could be decorated with paintings or calligraphy. These doors allowed for flexibility in the use of space, enabling rooms to be combined or separated as needed. The sound of a sliding door being opened or closed was distinctive, a soft whisper that announced movement without jarring the peaceful atmosphere of the home. The tracks on which these doors slid were marvels of precision engineering, carved from hardwood and polished to a mirror finish to ensure smooth operation. The decoration of sliding doors was often entrusted to master artists who specialized in this particular form of expression. The paintings that adorned these doors were not merely decorative but symbolic, their subjects chosen to reflect the seasons, the family's values, or the function of the room they enclosed. The creation of these works of art was a lengthy process, involving not just the artist, but paper makers, ink makers, and brush makers, each contributing their specialized skills to the final product. The craftsmanship that went into every aspect of the samurai household was extraordinary, representing the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of builders and artisans. Every joint was perfect, every surface smooth, every detail considered. This was not the result of haste or carelessness, but of a deep commitment to excellence that was reflected in every aspect of samurai culture. The tools used by these craftsmen were themselves works of art, handed down from master to apprentice, their steel perfectly tempered, their handles worn smooth by generations of use. The training of craftsmen was a lengthy process, involving years of apprenticeship, during which young men learned not just the techniques of their trade, but the philosophy that guided their work. The relationship between master and apprentice was one of mutual respect and deep commitment, with the master responsible not just for teaching skills, but for shaping character. The apprentice, in turn, was expected to demonstrate not just technical ability, but the personal qualities that would make him worthy of carrying on the tradition. The daily life rhythms of the samurai household followed patterns that had been established over centuries, each day beginning with rituals that honored both the family ancestors and the natural world. The morning began before dawn, in the quiet hours when the world was still and the mind was clear. The head of the household would rise first, performing ablutions that were both practical and spiritual, preparing for the day ahead with the same care that a warrior might prepare for battle. The pre-dawn hours were considered sacred, a time when the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds was thinnest. The ritual of awakening was performed with consciousness and gratitude, beginning with a moment of quiet reflection on the gift of another day. The washing of hands and face was done with water that had been prepared the night before, its temperature carefully maintained to provide comfort without shock. The brushing of teeth was accomplished with twigs from specific trees, their fibers effective in cleaning, while their natural oils provided protection against decay.
The family hierarchy was reflected in every aspect of daily life, from the order in which people rose in the morning to the seating arrangements at meals. This was not merely a matter of social convention, but of deep philosophical understanding about the nature of harmony and order. Each person had their role to play, their responsibilities to fulfill, their contributions to make to the smooth functioning of the household. The eldest male was typically the first to rise, followed by other family members in order of age and status, each person's awakening timed to allow for the proper preparation of the day's activities. The morning preparations were performed with the same attention to detail that characterized every other aspect of samurai life. The selection of clothing was not arbitrary, but based on careful consideration of the day's activities, the weather, and the social obligations that would need to be fulfilled. The arrangement of hair, the tying of obi, the selection of accessories, all were performed with consciousness and care. The morning meal was a quiet affair, eaten in contemplative silence or with soft conversation that never rose above a whisper. The food was simple but carefully prepared, each dish a small work of art that honored both the ingredients and the hands that had prepared them. Rice was the center of every meal, its presence a reminder of the agricultural foundation upon which all of Japanese society rested. The preparation of rice was itself a ritual, requiring knowledge of how much water to use, how long to cook it, how to achieve the perfect texture that would complement the other dishes. The other foods that accompanied the rice were chosen for their nutritional value, their seasonal appropriateness, and their ability to create a harmonious balance of flavors and textures. Vegetables were typically pickled or lightly cooked, their natural flavors enhanced rather than masked by the preparation methods. Fish, when available, was prepared with techniques that preserved its delicate taste while ensuring its safety. The arrangement of food on the serving dishes was considered as important as the food itself, each plate composed like a small painting. The martial training that was part of every samurai's daily routine was conducted with the same attention to detail and respect for tradition that characterized every other aspect of household life. The practice of swordsmanship was not merely about developing physical skill, but about cultivating mental discipline and spiritual awareness. Each movement was performed with consciousness, each technique practiced until it became as natural as breathing. The training typically began at dawn, when the air was cool and the mind was clear, the body prepared for the demands of physical exertion. The practice area was carefully maintained, its floor swept clean, and its boundaries clearly marked. The swords used in practice were treated with the same reverence as the weapons that would be carried in actual combat. Their blades polished to mirror brightness, their handles wrapped with silk cord that provided both grip and beauty. The maintenance of weapons was itself a form of meditation, requiring patience and attention to detail that reflected the samurai's commitment to excellence in all things. The forms practiced in these morning sessions were not arbitrary, but based on centuries of accumulated wisdom about the most effective ways to use the sword in combat. Each form contained within it the essence of multiple techniques compressed into movements that were both beautiful and deadly. The practice of these forms was not just physical, but mental, requiring the practitioner to visualize opponents, to anticipate attacks, to respond with movements that were both instinctive and calculated. The time set aside for reading and study was considered as important as the hours spent in physical training. The samurai were expected to be scholars as well as warriors, equally comfortable with the brush and the sword. The household library, though it might contain only a few precious volumes, was treated with the reverence due to sacred objects. Books were handled with care, their pages turned with gentle fingers that understood the value of the knowledge they contained. The acquisition of books was often a major expense for samurai households, their cost measured not just in money, but in the months or years of careful saving required to afford them.
The subjects studied in these sessions ranged from classical Chinese literature to military strategy, from poetry to philosophy, from mathematics to astronomy. The samurai understood that true strength came not from physical prowess alone, but from the cultivation of the mind and spirit. The reading was typically done aloud, the words given voice so that their sounds, as well as their meanings, could be appreciated. The discussion of what had been read was an important part of the learning process, with family members sharing their insights and interpretations. The writing practice that accompanied the reading was itself an art form, requiring not just literacy, but an understanding of calligraphy that could transform mere words into works of visual beauty. The preparation of ink was a ritual in itself, involving the careful grinding of ink stones with water to achieve the perfect consistency and color. The brushes used for writing were treated with the same care as the swords used for fighting, their tips protected when not in use, their handles kept clean and smooth. The periods of meditative silence that punctuated the day were not empty spaces, but full moments of connection with the deeper rhythms of existence. These times of quiet contemplation allowed the mind to settle, the spirit to find its center, the heart to remember its true nature. The silence was not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of peace, a quality that permeated every aspect of life in the samurai household. The practice of meditation was not separate from daily life, but woven into it, found in the careful attention paid to simple tasks, in the consciousness brought to ordinary moments. The posture adopted during meditation was itself a form of teaching, the straight spine and relaxed shoulders reflecting the balance between effort and ease that characterized the samurai ideal. The breathing was natural but conscious, each inhalation and exhalation observed without being controlled. The mind was allowed to settle naturally, like sediment in a glass of water, clarity emerging not through force, but through patient waiting. Life in the samurai household unfolded without the conveniences that we take for granted in our modern world. Yet this absence of modern utilities was not experienced as hardship, but as an opportunity for deeper connection with the natural rhythms of existence. The soft glow of candlelight created an atmosphere of warmth and intimacy that no electric bulb could match. The flames danced in their holders, casting shadows that moved like living things across the paper screens and wooden walls. The candles themselves were works of art, their wax often scented with aromatic oils, their wicks carefully trimmed to ensure clean burning. The making of candles was typically a household task, involving the collection of wax from various sources, the preparation of wicks from cotton or hemp fibers, and the careful process of dipping or molding that created the finished product. The timing of candle making was important, as the work was best done during the cooler months when the wax would not melt during the process. The storage of candles required attention to temperature and humidity, as improper conditions could cause them to warp or crack. The heating of the home was accomplished through carefully tended charcoal fires, their warmth spreading slowly through the rooms like a gentle embrace. The management of these fires was an art in itself, requiring knowledge of different types of charcoal and their burning characteristics. The sound of charcoal settling in the brazier was a soft percussion that accompanied the quiet activities of the household, a reminder of the constant attention required to maintain comfort and safety. The charcoal used in samurai households was often of the highest quality, burning cleanly with minimal smoke and ash. The preparation of charcoal was a specialized craft, involving the careful selection of wood, the construction of kilns, and the precise control of temperature and airflow during the burning process. The charcoal maker was a skilled artisan whose knowledge was essential to the comfort of the community. The different types of charcoal were chosen for different purposes, some burning hot and fast for cooking, others burning slowly and steadily for heating.
The braziers used to contain the charcoal fires were themselves objects of beauty, often made from bronze or iron and decorated with intricate designs. The placement of these braziers was carefully considered, positioned to provide maximum warmth while minimizing the risk of fire. The maintenance of braziers required daily attention, their surfaces kept clean and their air vents kept clear to ensure proper burning. The preparation of food was a labor-intensive process that involved every member of the household in some capacity. Rice had to be carefully washed and cooked, vegetables cleaned and cut, fish prepared with techniques that had been passed down through generations. The kitchen was a place of constant activity, yet the work was performed with a calm efficiency that made even the most complex tasks seem effortless. The kitchen tools were simple but effective, their designs refined through centuries of use. The washing of rice was a ritual in itself, requiring multiple changes of water until the grains were perfectly clean. The amount of water used for cooking was critical, too much resulting in mushy rice, too little in grains that were hard and undercooked. The timing of the cooking process was judged not by clocks, but by the sounds and smells that indicated each stage of preparation. The wooden paddle used to stir the rice was treated with the same care as any other kitchen implement, kept clean and smooth to prevent the rice from sticking. The preservation of food required knowledge of techniques that had been developed over centuries, methods that worked in harmony with the natural cycles of the seasons. Summer's abundance had to be stored against winter's scarcity, requiring skills in drying, salting, and fermenting that were as much art as science. The storerooms of the household were carefully organized, their contents monitored with the same attention to detail that characterized every other aspect of domestic life. The containers used for storage were chosen for their ability to protect food from moisture, insects, and other threats. The process of pickling vegetables was one of the most important preservation techniques, requiring knowledge of which vegetables could be successfully pickled, what combinations of salt and other seasonings would produce the best results, and how long the pickling process should be allowed to continue. The ceramic crocks used for pickling were often family heirlooms, passed down through generations and valued for their ability to produce consistently good results. When darkness fell, the household settled into a rhythm of quiet activities that honored the natural cycle of day and night. Without electric lights to extend the day, people learned to work with the natural rhythms of light and darkness, rising with the sun and retiring soon after its set. The evening hours were times of reflection, for quiet conversation, for the gentle activities that could be performed by candlelight. The transition from day to night was marked by rituals that acknowledged the changing energy of the household. The lighting of evening candles was performed with ceremony, each flame representing the continuation of the day's activities into the quieter hours of night. The placement of candles was carefully considered, positioned to provide light where it was needed, while minimizing the atmosphere of peace and contemplation. The shadows cast by candlelight created a world that was different from the bright clarity of day, a world where the imagination could wander and the spirit could find rest. The silence that descended upon the household after dusk was not empty, but full, pregnant with the possibilities of rest and renewal. The sounds that broke this silence were few and meaningful: the soft whisper of feet on tatami mats, the gentle rustle of silk clothing, the distant sound of temple bells marking the hours. These sounds became part of the texture of the night, familiar and comforting in their predictability. The night sounds of the natural world, the chirping of insects, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the distant call of night birds, all became part of the evening symphony.
The preparation for sleep was performed with the same attention to detail that characterized every other aspect of samurai life. The bedding was carefully arranged, the pillows positioned to provide proper support for the head and neck. The sleeping robes were selected for their comfort and their ability to regulate body temperature throughout the night. The final checking of the house, ensuring that fires were properly banked and doors were secure, was performed with the thoroughness that came from understanding the importance of safety and security. The civic and spiritual aspects of life in the samurai household were woven together in ways that made them inseparable from the daily routines of domestic existence. The household shrine was not merely a place of worship, but the spiritual center of the home, where the ancestors were honored and the family's connection to the larger cosmos was acknowledged. The daily offerings placed before the shrine were simple but meaningful, expressions of gratitude and respect that connected the present generation with all those who had come before. The shrine itself was a work of art, its wooden structure carefully crafted and maintained, its contents arranged with the same attention to detail that characterized every other aspect of the household. The morning ritual at the shrine was performed by the head of the household, involving the lighting of incense, the offering of rice and water, and the recitation of prayers that had been passed down through generations. The incense used was of the finest quality, its fragrance believed to carry prayers to the spirit world. The rice offered was always the first portion from the morning meal, the best of what the family had to offer. The tea ceremony, when it was practiced in the household, was not merely a social ritual, but a spiritual discipline that brought together elements of art, philosophy, and religious practice. The careful preparation of the tea, the precise movements of the participants, the appreciation of the simple beauty of the utensils used, all combined to create moments of transcendence that lifted the participants out of the ordinary world and into a realm of heightened awareness. The tea ceremony was understood to be a way of practicing mindfulness, of bringing complete attention to the present moment. The tea room was often the most refined space in the house, its design following principles that had been developed over centuries. The entrance to the tea room was deliberately small, requiring participants to humble themselves by crawling through the opening. The interior was simply but elegantly appointed, with a hanging scroll, a flower arrangement, and the implements necessary for the preparation and serving of tea. The tatami mats in the tea room were of the finest quality, their surfaces smooth and unblemished. The ancestral respect that was central to samurai culture was expressed not just in formal ceremonies, but in the countless small acts of daily life that honored the memory of those who had gone before. The arrangement of the household, the preservation of family traditions, the careful maintenance of family treasures, all served as ongoing expressions of the deep connection between the living and the dead. The family genealogy was maintained with meticulous care, each generation's contributions to the family honor recorded and remembered. The family treasures, which might include swords, armor, scrolls, or tea implements, were stored with the utmost care and brought out only on special occasions. These objects were not merely valuable possessions, but links to the past, tangible connections to ancestors who had lived and died in service to the same ideals that guided the present generation. The maintenance of these treasures was a sacred duty, requiring knowledge of proper storage techniques and the ability to perform necessary repairs.
The philosophy of Bushido, the way of the warrior, was not merely a code of conduct for battle, but a comprehensive approach to life that influenced every aspect of existence in the samurai household. This philosophy emphasized duty, honor, loyalty, and self-sacrifice, values that were reflected in the way family members treated each other, the way they approached their daily tasks, and the way they prepared for the challenges that life would inevitably bring. The teaching of Bushido began in early childhood, with parents modeling the behavior they expected from their children. The concept of duty was central to the samurai worldview, involving not just obligation to one's lord, but responsibility to family, community, and society as a whole. This duty was not experienced as a burden, but as a privilege, an opportunity to contribute to something larger than oneself. The fulfillment of duty was seen as the path to personal fulfillment, the way to achieve meaning and purpose in life. Children learned from their earliest years that their individual desires must be balanced against their responsibilities to others. The pursuit of perfection in all things, whether in the art of swordsmanship or the preparation of a simple meal, was a central tenet of samurai philosophy. This was not the neurotic perfectionism of the modern world, but a deep commitment to excellence that came from understanding the sacred nature of all activities. Every task, no matter how humble, was an opportunity to practice the virtues that made one fully human. The sweeping of floors, the arrangement of flowers, the preparation of food, all were seen as opportunities for spiritual development. The integration of martial and cultural arts was a distinctive feature of samurai education and daily life.
The same hand that could wield a sword with deadly precision could also write calligraphy of extraordinary beauty, compose poetry that captured the essence of a moment, or arrange flowers in a way that spoke to the deepest levels of the human spirit. This integration was not accidental, but the result of a philosophical understanding that true strength came from the harmony of all human capacities. The warrior who was also a poet, the swordsman who was also a scholar, these were the ideals that guided samurai education. The seasonal festivals that marked the passage of time in the samurai household were occasions for both celebration and reflection, opportunities to acknowledge the larger rhythms that governed all life. The New Year was the most important of these festivals, a time when the household was thoroughly cleaned, new clothes were worn, and special foods were prepared. The symbolism of renewal was everywhere, from the pine and bamboo decorations that adorned the entrance to the special dishes that were prepared only at this time of year. The spring festival of cherry blossom viewing was a time of particular beauty and poignancy, when the samurai contemplated the fleeting nature of life through the metaphor of the falling petals. The cherry blossoms, beautiful in their brief flowering and poignant in their quick passing, were seen as symbols of the samurai ideal, the willingness to live fully and die beautifully when duty required it. Families would gather beneath the flowering trees, sharing food and poetry, contemplating the beauty and impermanence of existence. The summer festivals brought different energies, celebrations of abundance and growth, times when the community came together to give thanks for the gifts of the earth. The rice planting festivals were particularly important, as rice was the foundation of life itself. The samurai participated in these community celebrations, their presence a reminder of the interconnectedness of all social classes. The festival foods were prepared with special care, their flavors and presentation reflecting the joy of the season. The autumn moon viewing festivals were times of quiet contemplation, when the harvest moon was appreciated for its beauty and its symbolism of completion and fulfillment. Families would gather in gardens or on verandas, sharing tea and sweets while contemplating the moon's serene beauty. The autumn was also a time for preparing for winter, both practically and spiritually, a time for gathering not just food and fuel, but inner resources for the darker months ahead.
The winter solstice marked the turning point of the year, the moment when the days began to lengthen and the promise of spring became real once again. This was often a time for quiet reflection, for contemplating the lessons of the past year and setting intentions for the year to come. The winter festivals were more subdued than those of other seasons, their beauty found in simplicity and restraint rather than in abundance and display. The education of children in the samurai household began from the moment of birth, with every interaction serving as a lesson in the values and behaviors that would shape their adult lives. The lullabies sung to infants contained within them the seeds of the philosophy they would later study formally. The games played by children were not mere entertainment, but training for the skills they would need as adults. The stories told to children were carefully chosen to illustrate the virtues of courage, loyalty, and self-sacrifice. The formal education of samurai children was comprehensive, covering not just the martial arts, but literature, mathematics, music, and the arts. The goal was not merely to impart knowledge, but to develop character, to create individuals who could serve their families and their society with honor and distinction. The relationship between teacher and student was one of deep respect and mutual commitment, with the teacher responsible not just for imparting knowledge, but for modeling the behavior expected of a samurai. The learning process was understood to be lifelong, with even the most accomplished samurai continuing to study and practice throughout their lives. The concept of mastery was not seen as a destination, but as a journey, a continuous process of refinement and improvement. The tea ceremony master continued to study the way of tea. The swordsman continued to practice his forms. The scholar continued to deepen his understanding of classical texts. The role of women in the samurai household was complex and multifaceted, involving responsibilities that were both domestic and strategic. While women did not typically engage in combat, they were expected to be ready to defend the household if necessary, and many were trained in the use of weapons such as the naginata, a long-handled blade that was particularly effective in close quarters. The education of samurai women included not just domestic skills, but literature, music, and the arts, as they were expected to be capable of managing complex households and representing their families in social situations. The relationship between husband and wife in the samurai household was based on mutual respect and complementary roles rather than romantic love as understood in the modern sense. The wife was responsible for the internal management of the household, while the husband dealt with external affairs. This division of labor was not seen as inequality, but as a practical arrangement that maximized the effectiveness of the family unit. The samurai wife was expected to be strong, intelligent, and capable, able to make important decisions in her husband's absence. The bearing and raising of children was seen as one of the most important responsibilities of the samurai wife, as the future of the family line depended on her ability to produce and properly educate the next generation. The pregnancy and childbirth were surrounded by rituals and precautions designed to ensure the health of both mother and child. The early education of children was primarily the responsibility of the mother, who would teach them the basic values and behaviors that would serve as the foundation for their later formal education. The gardens that surrounded the samurai household were not merely decorative, but served multiple functions, providing food, medicine, and spiritual nourishment for the family. The design of these gardens followed principles that had been developed over centuries, creating spaces that were both beautiful and functional. The placement of plants was carefully considered, taking into account not just their aesthetic qualities, but their practical uses and their symbolic meanings.
The vegetable gardens provided much of the food consumed by the household, with different sections devoted to different types of crops. The timing of planting and harvesting was crucial, requiring knowledge of seasonal patterns and weather conditions. The soil was carefully prepared and maintained, with compost and other organic materials added to ensure fertility. The garden tools were simple but effective. their designs refined through generations of use. The herb gardens provided medicines and seasonings, with plants chosen for their healing properties as well as their ability to enhance the flavor of food. The knowledge of which plants to use for different ailments was passed down through generations, with the women of the household typically serving as the primary keepers of this knowledge. The preparation of herbal remedies was a skilled art, requiring understanding of proper dosages and preparation methods. The ornamental gardens were designed to provide beauty and tranquility, spaces where the members of the household could find peace and inspiration. These gardens often included elements such as stone lanterns, water features, and carefully pruned trees and shrubs. The maintenance of these gardens was considered a form of meditation, with the pruning, weeding, and arranging performed with the same attention to detail that characterized every other aspect of samurai life. The changing seasons brought different tasks and different beauties to the garden, with each time of year having its own rhythm and requirements. Spring brought the joy of new growth and the work of planting. Summer brought the abundance of harvest and the constant attention required to maintain the plants in the heat. Autumn brought the final harvest and the preparation for winter, and winter brought the quiet beauty of snow-covered branches and the planning for the next year's garden. The tools used in the samurai household were simple but perfectly suited to their purposes, their designs refined through centuries of use and adaptation. The kitchen knives were works of art, their blades forged by master craftsmen who understood the properties of steel and the requirements of food preparation. The maintenance of these knives was a daily responsibility, with their edges kept sharp and their surfaces kept clean and rust-free. The farming tools used in the gardens were equally well designed, with handles shaped to fit comfortably in the hand and heads forged to perform their specific functions with maximum efficiency. The hoes, rakes, and shovels were not mass-produced items, but individual tools crafted by skilled blacksmiths who understood the needs of their users. The care and maintenance of these tools was considered as important as their use, with broken handles repaired and metal parts kept clean and sharp. The household implements used for cleaning and maintenance were crafted with the same attention to quality and durability. The brooms were made from carefully selected materials, their handles carved from wood that would not splinter or break, their bristles chosen for their ability to sweep effectively without damaging the surfaces being cleaned. The buckets and basins were made from wood or ceramic, their shapes designed for efficiency, and their surfaces finished to prevent the accumulation of dirt and bacteria. The legacy of the samurai household extends far beyond the historical period in which it flourished, continuing to influence Japanese culture and society in ways both obvious and subtle. The peaceful precision that characterized daily life in these households can still be seen in the Japanese attention to detail, the respect for craftsmanship, and the ability to find beauty in simplicity. The morning ritual of cleaning that begins each day in many Japanese homes echoes the practices of the samurai household, where the care of one's environment was understood to be inseparable from the care of one's soul.
The seasonal awareness that shaped the rhythm of life in the samurai household continues to influence Japanese culture today, from the careful attention paid to seasonal foods to the celebration of natural phenomena like cherry blossoms and autumn leaves. This deep connection to the natural world was not merely aesthetic, but philosophical, reflecting an understanding that human life was part of a larger pattern that extended far beyond the boundaries of individual existence. The Japanese calendar is still marked by seasonal festivals and observances that echo the rhythms of the samurai household. The quiet influence of the samurai household can be seen in the Japanese approach to hospitality, where guests are treated with a level of attention and care that transforms even the simplest encounter into something approaching a sacred ritual. The tea ceremony, though practiced by relatively few people today, continues to embody the principles that guided life in the samurai household: attention to detail, respect for tradition, and the ability to find transcendence in the simplest of activities. The principles of the tea ceremony, emphasizing harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, continue to influence Japanese approaches to social interaction. The architecture of the samurai household continues to influence Japanese design, both in traditional buildings and in modern structures that incorporate elements like tatami mats, sliding doors, and the integration of indoor and outdoor spaces. The principles that guided the construction of these homes, particularly the emphasis on flexibility and harmony with the natural environment, have found new expression in contemporary Japanese architecture that seeks to honor the past while addressing the needs of the present. The minimalist aesthetic that characterized samurai architecture has become a defining feature of modern Japanese design. The educational philosophy that was central to the samurai household, with its emphasis on the integration of physical, intellectual, and spiritual development, continues to influence Japanese approaches to learning and personal development. The idea that true education involves the whole person, not just the accumulation of facts or the development of technical skills, reflects the holistic approach to human development that characterized the samurai tradition. The Japanese concept of lifelong learning, with its emphasis on continuous improvement and refinement, echoes the samurai understanding that mastery was not a destination, but a journey. The way of life that flourished in the samurai household was not merely a collection of customs and practices, but a comprehensive approach to human existence that sought to bring all aspects of life into harmony. The daily routines, the seasonal celebrations, the careful attention to the details of domestic life, all served to create an environment where people could develop their full potential as human beings. This was not achieved through grand gestures or dramatic efforts, but through the patient accumulation of small acts of consciousness and care. The emphasis on duty and service that characterized the samurai ethos was not merely about obedience to social hierarchy, but about the recognition that individual fulfillment could only be achieved through contribution to the common good. The samurai household was not just a private dwelling, but a small community where each person's well-being was connected to the well-being of all. This understanding of the interconnectedness of human existence created a social fabric that was both strong and flexible, capable of adapting to changing circumstances while maintaining its essential character. The discipline that shaped every aspect of life in the samurai household was not the harsh discipline of military training, but the gentle discipline of mindful living. Every action was performed with awareness. Every moment lived with intention. This approach to life required no special talent or extraordinary effort, only the willingness to bring consciousness to the ordinary activities of daily existence. The result was a life that was both deeply fulfilling and profoundly peaceful, rich in meaning and poor in the kind of anxiety that comes from constantly striving after things that can never fully satisfy.
As we reflect on the life of the samurai household, we are reminded that the pursuit of happiness and fulfillment does not require the accumulation of possessions or the achievement of external success. The samurai found contentment in the careful performance of their daily duties, in the cultivation of their character, and in their connection to something larger than themselves. They understood that true wealth lay not in what they owned, but in what they had become, not in what they could take from the world, but in what they could give to it. The silence that settled over the samurai household at the end of each day was not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of completion, the quiet satisfaction that comes from a day well lived. In that silence, the sounds of the natural world could be heard more clearly: the whisper of wind through bamboo, the distant sound of temple bells, and the soft rustle of leaves in the garden. These sounds spoke of the eternal rhythms that underlay all human activity, the cycles of growth and rest, work and contemplation, effort and surrender that give meaning to existence. The samurai household was a place where time moved differently than it does in our modern world, where each moment was allowed to unfold at its own pace, where the pressure to achieve and accumulate was replaced by the desire to perfect and preserve. The result was a quality of life that was rich in texture and deep in meaning, where even the simplest activities were infused with significance and beauty. In the garden of the samurai household, the seasons passed in their ancient rhythm, each bringing its own gifts and lessons. Spring brought the renewal of life, the emergence of new growth from the apparent death of winter. Summer brought abundance and activity, the full flowering of nature's potential. Autumn brought the harvest and the preparation for winter, the time of gathering and preservation. Winter brought rest and reflection, the time of drawing inward and preparing for the new cycle to begin. The people of the samurai household lived in harmony with these natural rhythms, allowing their own lives to be shaped by the same forces that governed the growth of rice and the blooming of cherry trees. They understood that human beings were not separate from nature, but part of it, subject to the same laws and blessed with the same possibilities for growth and renewal. This understanding created a way of life that was both sustainable and satisfying, capable of providing meaning and purpose across generations. The craftsmen who built and maintained the samurai household understood that their work was not merely functional but sacred, that every beam they placed and every joint they cut was a contribution to the harmony of the whole. The farmers who grew the rice that sustained the household understood that their work was not merely economic but spiritual,
that every grain they harvested was a gift to be received with gratitude. The servants who maintained the daily operations of the household understood that their work was not merely labor, but service. That every task they performed was a contribution to the well-being of the family they served. This understanding of work as service, of service as worship, created an environment where even the most humble tasks were performed with dignity and care. The sweeping of floors, the preparation of meals, the tending of gardens, all were seen as opportunities to practice the virtues that made life meaningful. The result was a society where every person, regardless of their station, could find purpose and satisfaction in their daily activities. The wisdom of the samurai household was not contained in books or formal teachings, but embodied in the daily practices that shaped every aspect of life. The way tea was prepared, the way gardens were tended, the way children were taught, all contained within them lessons about how to live with grace and purpose. This wisdom was passed down not through formal instruction, but through observation and imitation, with each generation learning from the example of those who had come before. As the night deepens and our journey through the samurai household draws to a close, we are left with images of a way of life that was both simple and profound, both disciplined and free. The soft glow of paper lanterns illuminating tatami mats, the sound of water being drawn from a well, the whisper of silk clothing as someone moves through the darkened house. These are the memories we carry with us as we return to our own time and place. The legacy of the samurai household lives on, not in museums or history books, but in the human heart, in the universal longing for a life of meaning and purpose, for connection to something larger than ourselves, for the peace that comes from living in harmony with the natural world. The lessons learned in those quiet rooms and gentle gardens are as relevant today as they were centuries ago, reminding us that true fulfillment comes not from the accumulation of things, but from the cultivation of character, not from the pursuit of pleasure, but from the practice of virtue. In the end, the samurai household teaches us that the art of living well is not about achieving perfection, but about approaching each moment with awareness and intention, about finding beauty in simplicity and meaning in the ordinary activities of daily life. As we settle into our own rest, we carry with us the peaceful spirit of those who walked before us on tatami mats, who found in the discipline of daily life a path to transcendence, who discovered in the service of others the secret of their own fulfillment, and who learned that the true way of the warrior is not conquest, but surrender, not taking, but giving, not fighting, but accepting the gentle rhythm of existence that flows through all things like water through an ancient garden, constant and changing, eternal and immediate, as close as breath and as vast as the sky above the mountains of Japan.